Unraveling the Genetics of Elongated Skulls Interview with Brien Foerster 長頭人間の遺伝子の解明ブライアン・フォースター氏との対談広島林浜松シティジャパン以下のインタビューはパラカスの長頭頭蓋骨に関してエンシャントオリジンのエイプリル・フォロウェイと研究者でもあり作家でもあるブライアン・フォレスター氏との間でなされたインタビューということになります。特に今回のインタビューはパラカス頭蓋骨の一つについてなされた遺伝子検査に関し最近の発表についてなされたものです。2014年2月8日。
So, Brien, thank you very much for joining Ancient Origins for this interview about the elongated skulls in Paracas. Some of our viewers will have already seen an interview we had some time ago about various research around elongated skulls. But I'm really enthusiastic about this interview because it relates to a recent announcement you made about some genetic testing that has been done on one of the skulls found in Paracas. So to begin with, could you please just give a little bit of background about the Paracas skulls in particular and what makes them different from other elongated skulls that have been found?
Well, what's kind of intriguing is if you look on the internet to any photo, website, and if you put in something like alien skull or human hybrid skull, quite often the Paracas skulls show up predominantly because they are so large in size. Some of them are very natural looking, and also there are so many of them that have been found, which is quite intriguing.
So would you say that some of the features that these skulls have rule out the possibility of cranial deformation, processes like head flattening or head binding, which are known to have happened in other cases of elongated skulls?
Well, that is the curious point, in that cranial deformation is known to have occurred in many different parts of the world, most prominently about 2,000 years ago, from the Middle East, even Melanesia, Central America. But because I've been intimately engaged with the elongated skulls of Paracas and the Paracas culture in general that died out 2,000 years ago, I've had the opportunity to look in person at numerous of the skulls, as well as hundreds which are in collections all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them, I would say, possibly between 5 and 10% of them do not show obvious signs of cradle boarding or other forms of cranial deformation, which generally tends to create flat surfaces, either in the forehead or the back of the head. Some of these literally look like they are natural in appearance.
And so I've also heard that some of the other features include increased volume and increased weight compared to other skulls. Is that not something that could also happen as a result of head flattening, where, through the process of binding, the size actually increases, or is that absolutely not possible?
Well, from the doctors that I've spoken to, they said that you can alter the shape of the skull, but you can't increase the size of the skull, because the skull is genetically predetermined to have a certain volume, and so it's much like in terms of the analogy I have is pottery, where you have a piece of greenware, which is a pot which is not quite dried yet. You can alter its shape, but you can't change the volume of it itself. Some people have stated that the reason why the Paracas could have had denser skulls or be heavier, etc., is the result of their diet or malnutrition or whatever. And the thing is that they had an incredible diet of seafood as well as terrestrial plants. They probably actually ate better than most of us do today.
Mm-hmm. And so the study of these skulls is becoming a lot more interesting now that we have the technology for extracting DNA and analysing DNA. Before any testing was undertaken, did you have any theories yourself about what might be found?
Well, I conjecture anything. Of course, I've had many different ideas, but I've been waiting for actual DNA analysis, and that has taken an incredibly long time, mainly due to lack of funding and also finding a geneticist who, A, is open to studying this, doing it at a fraction of the normal cost that it would cost commercially. And importantly, we wanted to do this independently because going through any governmental or private foundation or whatever would probably result in the results either being deleted or altered or being kept for purposes other than my intent, and my intent simply is to find the truth as to who these people were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so can you explain a bit about the testing process that actually took place or has taken place so far?
Well, it's a very complex process, and most people don't realize this because they think, well, DNA testing is quite simple now. I can go and have my, a blood sample extracted and be told within a few days, all of my genetic ancestry. But what you have to take into account is the last of the Paracas died 2,000 years ago. And so you're talking about 2,000 years of the degeneration of the material. The late Lloyd Pye, who I was acquainted with, very personally and professionally because of his fascination with this, his analogy is that to take a sample and analyze it from somebody who's living is the equivalent of looking at or studying a crystal bowl because it's complicated and intact. And then he said the equivalent of ancient DNA is throwing it on a concrete floor because it becomes shattered into tiny little segments. So it's only the most recent, sophisticated, extremely expensive DNA analyzing equipment that can take all of those tiny segments and put them back together. So it's been very, very difficult to find someone who would pursue that. We actually have two different geneticists at work, but it happened to be this one who's had samples for more than 2 years who has given me this initial result, which completely shocked him.
And so the thing most people really want to know is what exactly was found in that initial result.
Yeah, and basically what I can say is that he speculates that there are segments of the DNA of the Paracas which do not match anything in GenBank, which is the genetic database located in the United States that contains all known genetic DNA information. So he said there are segments which don't seem to be any haplotype of human that we know of. Also not related to Neanderthal or any other human-like being that has been studied so far.
Quite incredible, really. But now you have emphasised that this is phase 1 or stage 1 of the testing. What then is the next stage after this one? Is it possible that this result is contaminated or it's not accurate and that further stages may reveal something different?
It is possible. However, this person who lives in the United States and has a doctorate, he does a lot of contract work with the U.S. government. So clearly the government wouldn't choose someone who was flaky or a sensationalist. He's taken a lot of time. It's been more than 2 years for him to give us the initial result of one sample so far. But he does have samples from 3 different skulls from Paracas. And so what I'm hoping is that this, and the reason why I released it, this information, is to try to generate interest from the public so that we can do a fundraiser in order to be able to study the other 2 skulls as well as other samples from the 3 skulls themselves so that we can replicate the tests as many times as possible to see whether or not this is an anomaly or whether it's something which is truly mind-blowing, I guess is the term.
Yeah, exactly. And is it possible, the fact that it doesn't match anything in the gene bank, could it be that this is just a one-of-a-kind mutation, a mutation that hasn't been seen before and is just unique to that particular race of people?
It could be, but again, the whole study is so new that, and the Paracas are very mysterious people. Nobody has really studied them for about 70 years. The people who study them now study their textiles, but the whole idea of the fact that their skulls seem to be of a different shape has been dismissed in general as simply being cranial deformation, but in fact nobody knows where the Paracas people came from. They lived on the coast of Peru, and through my studies I believe that there's a certain percentage of their ancestry that comes from another part of the world, because they also, amongst the royalty, seem to have had reddish-brown hair, which is not a Native American characteristic, and they were reasonably tall. Some specimens we found were 5'10" to 6 feet to even taller in height, and that's quite atypical of a Native American person 2,000 plus years ago living on the coast of Peru.
Mm-hmm. And so what is your opinion about these findings? Do you have a view about what this actually means, this result?
Well, the theory I'm developing is that the Paracas are a mix of different types of people. The area they chose to live 2,000 years ago was much lusher than it is now. It would have been a perfect place for a society to live in terms of food production. The fact that they had totora reeds and still have totora growing on the coast of Peru meant that they were capable of building not only little boats but probably large ships out of reeds. They had cotton to make sails, and they could have been great seafarers. I also believe that the famous Nazca people, who also occupied the area after the demise of the Paracas, could literally have wiped the Paracas culture out. Their knowledge, absorbed some of their, some of their people would have interbred with the Nazca, but elongated skulls disappear in the Paracas area 2,000 years ago, and that corresponds with the arrival of the Nazca, who were a very warlike people.
And so you say a different sort of mix of people. Now, the thing on everyone's mind is, are these skulls alien? Are they extraterrestrial? When you say a different mix of people, do you think there's a possibility that, a race of beings did arrive in this part of the country and perhaps bred with humans? What's your view on that?
Well, I'm open to the idea. The thing is, I don't want to go too far in that direction yet because, again, we've only had an initial result. But due to the fact that the geneticist has found segments of DNA which don't correspond to anything, I think it's doubtful that they're a separate breed or type of humanity, because where would they have come from? Mm-hmm. And again, the strange thing is this predominant aspect of these elongated skulls amongst the royal family is very, very odd. So future sampling, future results will either reinforce or dismiss the result we have. But I think we're looking at something very intriguing, and I don't dismiss the idea of there having been off-planet either intervention or something. And Lloyd Pye was very strong with that idea. He simply said, these are not human beings.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Lloyd Pye, are you sort of carry forward the research he was doing, or do you know what is being done about the research that was being undertaken by Lloyd Pye?
Yeah, several months before his death, he passed the Star Child skull and the information on to a group of people. Because he knew he was ill, he wasn't sure if he would recover, and so they're doing major fundraising. They've done a lot of genetic analysis, which people can see on Lloyd's website. The thing is, people really have to spend the time to read all of the information because you can't get a full picture of what the Star Child is or was, through 5 or 10 minutes of reading. There's been a lot of money and effort spent on Star Child, and the unfortunate thing is there's only one Star Child, whereas there are hundreds of Paracas skulls. I mean, it's it's amazing, and the access is quite astonishing too, because being related with the Paracas History Museum, I've assisted in building up the collection to 40 skulls so far, and we are very open to researchers from around the world coming, whether they're doctors or geneticists or whoever, because we honestly want to get down or get to the bottom of this, and any outside help is very greatly appreciated.
Well, I guess the quantity really opens up the possibility to replicate these results and keep everyone happy by doing those extra studies, having different researchers using different skulls, because then whatever the result will be a lot more convincing after all that replication has been done.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And any scientific test means that you have to be able to replicate it. And that's why, again, this is an initial, you could even call it teaser result that I sent out to the public. Also, a number of individuals assisted me in raising $7,000 testing, and I wanted them to know 2 years that we actually did have something, that the money wasn't absconded or or blown on anything. It 100% went into it. We also have another geneticist working on completely other samples as well. That's Dr. Melba Ketchum from Texas, who, of course, is embroiled heavily in Bigfoot studies, which is she's got a lot of flack from. But I still believe in her, and there may be another 1 or 2 genetic study organizations that may come on board with us. And so the more that do the analysis and the more cross-referencing we can do, the better for this whole project.
Yeah, great. Now, there are a lot of people out there who are skeptical. They do sort of question or they want to see these results firsthand on paper. They want to know, the name of the geneticist, the name of the institution, and they do become suspicious when some of these details aren't yet available. How would you address those concerns?
Well, I have actually spoken with the geneticist about it, and he has said that he will be willing to address the public about this, but not after one test, because it's too easy for skeptics or whoever to rip his information apart. And so as a scientist, he wants to make sure that he's done several replications, and then when he's comfortable, then he will come forward himself and discuss what it is that he believes we're looking at.
Okay, that's great. That's very positive. So moving forward from here, what's the time scale relating to further testing and also the fundraising process? I mean, if somebody did want to get involved in this, what could they do?
Well, at the moment, I've been in discussions with someone who wants to set up an Indiegogo campaign about this, and I've been discussing with him for about 5 months, but the timing hasn't been right because we've been preoccupied with other things. So probably within the next 2 or 3 months, we will set up a campaign very specifically targeted to very specific things. We'll have a complete list of where any funds will go, completely itemized. I will get nothing from it, just as I've received nothing financially from the previous fundraising that we did. And other samples have recently gone to the geneticist from a third party, and I'm still waiting for some kind of result from Dr. Melba Ketchum. She's trying to actually get at least one, if not more, laboratories in the U.S. to do complete genome studies, which is very complicated and technically would cost an absolute fortune, upwards of at least $100,000. So we're hoping that other geneticists will be able to volunteer their time and the use of their equipment for the good of, basically we're doing this for the good of humanity, not for any kind of personal benefit.
Yeah, I mean, the knowledge is incredibly important, regardless of what these skulls end up being, human or otherwise. It's still incredibly important for unraveling the history of our past. These are obviously an incredibly mysterious group of people.
Well, definitely. And the thing is, since elongated skulls have also been found amongst the Olmec of Mexico, also in, not necessarily, people have said Russia. It's not really Russia. It's actually the area of Georgia and that area. There's quite a number of elongated skulls have been found there that date back about 2,000 years. And actually, I've been mapping where this process has existed all over the world. And so what I'm trying to do is try to set up some kind of concept of migration pattern, or in fact, were these different groups genetically related? We don't know yet. It's an ongoing procedure, but I'm very thankful that you wanted to cover this story at this time, because we're at the beginning, and any time that I get more information, I'm more than willing to share it with you.
Well, thanks very much, Brian. We really appreciate you, informing us of everything going on, and we really look forward to the updates that you provide as things progress.
Well, thank you, and your organization, Ancient Origins, is a phenomenal success. I'm very much a fan. Many other people are. You're growing very rapidly, and it's wonderful that such a group as yourselves are presenting this information to a global audience, because in the past it's always been little, small groups of people trying to do what you're attempting, and you're doing an incredibly good job at it.
Oh, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Mr. Brien Foerster and Ancient Origins, thank you very much for your effort. ということで、どのように判断なさるかは、私たちの問題ではないかと思います。ということで、これを確たる証拠と言わずして、何というかという問題なんですね。そういうことも含めまして、続くビデオをどうかご覧ください。Hello, this is Hiroshi Hayashi, Hamama City, Japan. This is an alien, and it's conclusive and physical evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an alien. Here is the evidence. 皆さんこんにちは。今日はエイリアンがこの地球上にいるという決定的かつ物理的証拠をお見せいたします。これはですね、もう半年以上も前に私が調べたエクアドルの、他のことで調べてた写真の中に混ざっていました。この頭蓋骨こそがですね、まさにエイリアンです。そしてこの地球にエイリアンがいるという物理的かつ決定的証拠です。皆さんご覧ください。これはエイリアンです。人間ではありません。人間ではないということはエイリアンです。見つかったのはエクアドルです。どうしてこれがエイリアンかと皆さんお思いになるでしょ？実はですね、頭頂骨が1枚でできているからなんです。これは人間の頭蓋骨です。左下はエイリアンの頭蓋骨です。人間は頭頂骨が3枚より合わさってできています。しかし、エイリアンは1枚しかありません。このライン、縫合線って言いますけども、縫合線を見比べてみてください。エイリアンの方にはその縫合線がありません。続くビデオをどうかご覧ください。Thank you. Hello,
This is Hiroshi Hayashi and Kemiya, Japan. A scar in tonka rin, cranial deformation in Japanese. ケミヤさんからですね、トンカラリンの近くで変形頭蓋骨が見つかった。長頭頭蓋骨ではないかという連絡をいただきました。それについて調べてみました。で、そのビデオも見てみました。で、長頭人間、コーンヘッドとも言いますけども、頭蓋骨は全世界で見つかっています。私が最初に知ったのはこのコーカサスですね。で、まとまって見つかっています。それから最近見つかったパラカス。というか、このパラカスの頭蓋骨は最近ではありませんけども、DNA 鑑定がなされました。それから、ナスカでも見つかりました。アタカマ、エジプトでももちろん見つかってますけども、ツタンカーメン家族は、このような長頭人間であったというふうに言われています。それから場所わかりませんけども、ロシアでも、それから全世界であちこちで見つかっています。で、日本でも、見つかったということになるわけですね。で、これがその変形頭蓋骨ですけども、これは果たして何なのかということなんです。この頭蓋骨の特徴はですね、顔の前面部が、ぺしゃんこになっていると言いますか、普通ではないということですね。で、ビデオの中では、板のようなものを当てて、そして変形させたんだというような説明がなされていました。じゃあ、コーンヘッドとヒューマンはどこが違うかということなんですね。ちょっとこの絵では見にくいんで、写真いろいろ探してみたんですけども、真上からの写真がないんですね。で、私これ自分の書いた本の中から撮りました。このように3枚に人間の頭っていうのは、頭蓋骨っていうのは真上から見ますと3つに分かれてるんですね。いわゆるその、頭頂骨が中央で2つに分かれているわけです。これが人間の頭蓋骨なんですけども、コーンヘッド、いわゆる長頭人間の頭蓋骨にはその、今言いました中央のラインがないんです。縫合線って言いますけども、それがないんですね。で、このあたりにその縦の縫合線があるはずなんですけども、ないんです。これが長頭人間の特徴なんですね。で、この、もう一つ、こんな頭蓋骨もあるんですけど、これをその、変形させると言っても限度がありますからね。で、この頭蓋骨も、人間の比べてみればわかりますよね。変形させる言ったって、ここまで変形して骨が発達するんだろうかって疑問もありますけども、これも、この長頭頭蓋骨も中央に縫合線がありませんね。皆さん自身でご確認ください。これがコーンヘッドの特徴なんです。DNA 鑑定するまでもなく、明らかに私たち人間とは違った、DNA を持った生物体である。もっと言えば知的生物体であるということになります。で、パラカスで見つかったコーンヘッドマン、すなわちイロンゲーティッドスカールについてはですね、すでに DNA 鑑定が終わっています。で、その報告が、発表されているんですけども、それはまさに驚くべき内容のものであったというふうに、この報告書は最初に書いています。で、これをずっと見ていきます。この続くビデオの中でもう一度説明すると思いますので、ここでは簡単に、見てください。パラカス頭蓋骨はですね、今までは板で挟んで変形させたというんですけども、それだけでは説明できないと。25% も大きく、90% も重いことが分かったと。そしてこの次なんですね。頭頂骨には2つではなく、1つのパリエタルプレートというんですか、頭頂板しかなく、先ほど説明しましたように、2つが寄り合わさってんじゃなくて、1枚しかないということですね。ですから真ん中の中央の、にあるべき縫合線がないわけです。これがパラカス頭蓋骨の特徴であり、また、人間でもない、霊長類でもない、ミトコンドリア DNA を持っていたと。酸素呼吸はしていたけども、人間ではないということですね。ここまではっきり分かっているわけです。そして、 この報告書はですね、人間とは交配できなかったということは、性行為をしてもですね、妊娠出産には結びつかなかっただろうと。そういうふうに結論付けています。これがパラカスの、ペルーのね、ナスカの近くですよね。サンサの大食団のすぐ近くですけども、そこで見つかったものです。結論から言いますと、トンカラリンの近くで見つかったこの変形頭蓋骨は、その、なんて言いますか、コーンヘッドマンとは一線を画すと言いますか、違ったものである、イコール人間のものである。変形させられたかどうかということはまた別問題であり、私には興味がありません。ということで、ケイミヤさん、報告を終わります。Thank you very much for watching and see you again next time. Bye! Hello, this is Tube Store, Matabe and edited by Hiro Hayashi. Conehead Man in Japan. 長頭人間は日本にも来ていた。チューブスターさんと又部さんから大変重要な情報が寄せられました。コーンヘッドマンは日本にも来ていた。その証拠と、そしてコーンヘッドマンはエイリアンであった。その証拠と証明です。これがチューブスターさんが送ってくださった写真ですけども、この写真はコーンヘッドマンですけども、どこの写真かわかりませんが、それは重要ではありません。この頭を見てください。で、チューブスターさんが言うにはヘルメットなのか、ということなんですね。象の感じからして日本の象でないことは確かですけども、これは、又部さんが送ってくださった、写真ですけども、これは戸田市ですね。から発掘された南原遺跡っていうんだそうですけども、そこから発掘された土偶ですね。ごめんなさい、埴輪です。埴輪ですよね。で、柴又八幡神宮で発見されて、そちらに、ごめんなさい、陳列してあるそうです。で、この二つの2枚の、チューブサーさんと又部さんの写真を見てですね、いろんなことに気がつくわけであります。まず、第一にこのエイリアンは地球へ来ていたということです。そしてこのエイリアンはですね、共通のヘルメットを被っていたということなんですよね。それはこれから、おいおい説明していきますけども、これはヘルメットなのか、デザインが延期や円利のね、頭と似ていると。確かにこれは右の方はイシュタール。すなわち、エジプトではマリ。それからヘブライ語ではマリアですね。はい。これがですね、曲線をカーブを見ていただきたいんですけども、明らかに、なんて言いますか、明らかにというか、明らかということは、軽率に使いたくありませんけども、ヘルメットですね。で、髪の毛は下の方にあるっていう感じですからね。あるいはこれ全体がヘルメットかもしれません。というのは、人間型のね、顔をしたヘルメットを被ると。そういった事実もいろいろ感じてきています。ですから、顔だけ見て、これ人間だっていうふうには判断なさらない方がいいと思います。で、これはですね、エンリルからある王がですね、シュメリアン、真ん中の生命の言ってですけども、神権を渡されているところですね。丸い輪に短冊がついています。前方後円符の形ですよ。そしてこれをイナンナ。これはイシュターのことです。これは別の絵なんですけども、延期がです。これ延期と書いてありますけども、説明にはね、エンリルということになりますよね。エンリルが神権をイシュタール。なわち、イシュタール、イナンナに渡しているところです。名前はいろいろ変わるんですね。この女神はですね。それはケイミヤさんが教えてくださいました。で、これもイナンナ、イシュタールです。で、この頭をここで見ていただきたいんですけどね。この黄色いのは、神剣は和と、それから短冊です。で、この頭を順に比較してみますと、皆さん同じだということにお気づきになると思います。コンセプトが同じなんですね。なんていうのかな、ふにゃふにゃふにゃふにゃふにゃと波のようなものがくっついているということなんですよね。そして、それと、またこれがイシュタール、いわゆるイナンダですね、の頭と比べてみてください。これでも決定的ですね。これはエイリアンのヘルメットであると。いわゆる王たちのね、息子たちと、そしてその孫娘のヘルメットであるということは、これで証明されました。 それから今度は、エイリアンの証明をこれからしなくちゃいけませんので、それにはこのダヴィンチの描いた絵を見てください。ダヴィンチ、左のがダヴィンチです。で、右にいるのがコーンヘッドマンですね。仲良かったんですね、この雰囲気からして。で、頭をこう比べてみてください。同じだということにお気づきになると思います。いわゆる超等人間、コーンヘッドマンです。で、これはブルガリアにある、ソフィアにある、アレキザンダー・ネフスキーという、寺院です。その中に、こうした2枚の絵があるんですけどね、左側の絵が古い、っていうか、右の方が修復されたのが新しいのかよくわかりませんけども、この色とこのビショップの顔を見てください。鼻が低くて、そしてなんて言いますか、頭が長くてってことにわかりますね。これがコーンヘッドマンです。手が異常に、長くて小さいです。腕が長くて手が小さいです。これがパラカスで見つかったコーンヘッドマンです。で、これはDNA 鑑定がすでになされています。これが柏柴又で、八幡神宮にある、超等人間ですね。やはり比べてみますとわかるように頭が長いことわかりますね。いわゆる超等人間は日本へも来ていたということです。これが事実の証明ですね。超等人間は日本にも皆さん来ていたんですよ。
Initial DNA analysis of Parker's elongated skull was released with incredible results. They contain only one parietal plate rather than two. The fact that the skull's features are not the result of cranial deformation means that the cause of the elongation is a mystery and has been for decades. パラカスの長頭骸骨に関する初期分析が公表されました。それは信じられない結果でした。それらの頭骸骨には2つではなく、たった1つのパリエタルプレート、つまり頭頂板しかなかったということです。頭蓋骨の特徴が頭蓋骨の変形によるものではないという事実は次のことを意味します。つまり、長頭は謎であったし、何十年もの間ずっと謎のままだったということです。今ご覧いただいているのが左上が人間の頭蓋骨です。右3枚はですね、エクアドルで見つかった長頭頭蓋骨 ということになります。頭頂版がですね、人間の場合は、縦に2つに分かれていますけども、長頭人間の頭蓋骨はですね、割れていない。つまり、頭頂版が1枚である点に注意してください。右の写真はですね、こうしたことが話題になる2012年以前に私がストックしておいた写真の中から見つけたものです。注意深くご覧ください。左は人間です。右は、長頭人間の頭蓋骨ということになります。DNA 鑑定するまでもなく、右の頭蓋骨はですね、少なくとも人間のものではないということになります。広志林、浜松市、ジャパン。Why can't people accept the truth as it is, which is the biggest mystery to me? Don't hide from the truth. Truth is in here. You find it here in this video. Hiroshi Hayashi, Hamama City, Japan. 人間の頭蓋骨です。この矢印の方向線に注意してください。人間の頭頂板はこのように分かれています。が、コーンヘッドの頭にはそれがありません。これが皆さん事実です。どうしてこうした事実を素直に見て、認めて、そして受け入れないのでしょうか。右下がコーンヘッドの頭蓋骨です。見にくい点があるかもしれませんが、しかしよく見てください。中央の縫合線がありません。つまり、コーンヘッドは少なくとも人間とは違った骨格を持っているということになります。イコールエイリアンということにはならないのかもしれません。つまり、地球同化型のエイリアンということになります。縫合線に注意してコーンヘッドの頭蓋骨を見てください。コーンヘッドの多くにはこうした中央の縫合線がありません。DNA 鑑定するまでもなく、事実が事実を示していると思います。遠い昔、コーンヘッドは火星からやってきました。そして、この地球に同化したと、私、林博は考えています。
Hello, this is Hiroshi Hayashi, Hamama City, Japan. Why can't people believe in what they see? Mystery of humans. Today's story is about a mystery of humans ourselves. Why not we can believe in what we see? But in English-speaking countries, they say seeing is believing. But people very often don't believe in what they see. You know why? One thing I can say here is that they don't like to believe in what they see. But that is not all. When they believe in what they see, the whole ideas in old rooms of their brains would collapse, of which they are afraid very much. People want to stay in the labyrinth of mysteries rather than to make adventures into the unknown world. That is called conservatism. Then I would like to ask you which way you choose to go. One is a way to make an adventure with me, Or another way is a way to stay in the world as you do now. Okay, here is one example that I can show you now. This is an elongated skull unearthed in Paracas in Peru. This is not at least a human's skull, since it has got only one parietal plate, which is different from humans. Compare the elongated skull with a human's. I say here, seeing is believing. We can't say here now that elongated skull is the one of aliens or extraterrestrial beings. But it is at least not a human's. Today's story is about people who have got elongated skulls with only one parietal plate. These people are called Paracas people who might have come from the outer space, or we call them ETs. Or I may say here, they are aliens. Do you accept my idea? If not, the door to the new world would be closed as ever before you. Please watch the following videos, for which I thank you very much. 謎、また謎。しかし、最大の謎は、実は人間自身なのかもしれません。古くから seeing is believing。百聞は一見にしかずと言います。しかし、中にはそれを信じない人もいます。見ても信じないのですね。で、今ここにお見せしているのは、パラカスで見つかりました長頭人間の頭蓋骨です。で、これはDNA 鑑定もなされていますけども、DNA 鑑定などするまでもなく、頭の骨を見ればわかるわけですね。いわゆる頭頂板と言いますけども、前から見ますとですね、人間の場合は中央で二つに分かれています。しかし、elongated skull、長頭人間の頭蓋骨にはですね、真ん中で分かれている線、すなわち縫合線というものがありません。全体として見ると、人間の方は頭で3枚の、ちょうど頭の中央でですね、3枚の骨が集まっています。しかし、長頭人間の方は、それが、後頭部の方ですね。1枚に見えます。これが決定的な証拠ということになります。が、だからといってですね、長頭人間イコールエイリアンというわけにはいかないかもしれません。エイリアンというためには、その間に、いくつかの、ハードルがあるわけですね。が、しかし少なくとも人間ではないということです。もっとわかりやすく言いますと、骨の数が足りないわけですね。いくら変形頭蓋骨だと言ってもですね、骨の数まで変えることはできません。そのことをですね、こうした論文が、今説明しているわけです。で、それについてですね、こうして私が何とか皆さんに長頭人間の頭蓋骨の写真を見せてきました。が、驚くべきことにこの長頭人間の研究っていうのはほとんどなされて、いなかったわけですね。そして最近になって、このパラカスで見つかった長頭人間の頭蓋骨を、DNA 鑑定した先生がいらっしゃいました。そして、その DNA 鑑定の結果、人間とは違うミトコンドリアを持っていた。つまり、酸素呼吸はしていたけれども、人間のものではなかったということです。